I'm gonna attempt to review this movie, but it's gonna sound a lot like this.
Convergence, viral marketing. We're going guerrilla. We're taking it to the streets while keeping an eye on the street. Wall Street. I don't want to reinvent the wheel here. In other words, it is what it is.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today our movie in the middle is Beau is Afraid. Beau is Afraid is Ari Aster's third film following Beau, an overly anxious middle-aged man as he attempts to visit his mother. I'm not lying, that is what the movie is about. It stars Joaquin Phoenix, Nathan Lane, Amy Ryan, Stephen McKinley, Patti LuPone, and Richard Kind. And yes, the very real, not AI, Armen Nahapetian. Oh, what to say about this movie. So obviously it has already gotten tons of reviews and tons of thoughts, and it just came out 2 days ago. I have never seen an A24 movie talked about so much, especially before it was even out. Every review is exactly what I thought it would be. Either they love it or they hate it. There are some that are in the middle, and they have a lot of thoughts that go with that, but most people are either on one side or the other. But I've never seen an A24 movie that is this weird talked about. Obviously, things like Everything Everywhere All at Once was talked about a lot, but like something like this where it's this abstract, never seen it talked about that much. So that was really interesting and very telling. And I had no idea what to even think going into this movie. I honestly didn't even think it would reach the height of the reviews that I was seeing, because they were using things like Odyssey and epic and absurdist and Kaufman-esque, Kafka-esque, Coffee-esque. There was just a lot of things that they were putting in these reviews, and I was like, I think I'm just going to have to reframe my whole mindset going into this movie. And I gotta be honest, I think that did help. So starting off with the highs, I think the biggest is obviously Joaquin Phoenix. He absolutely committed to this movie in whatever way that means. He did. And is he okay? He just seems to be taking a lot of roles where he's just so traumatized. And I feel so bad for him. But he was just so good because he just had to absolutely lose it for most of this movie. He's both the emotional core and has unexpectedly funny moments, which I'll talk about in a second. But it just blended so well because the whole time you're like, is he sick? Is he traumatized? Is he high? Am I high? The whole thing is just so ridiculous. And he is at the center of everything. And I mean, he just did a really, really great job. And that being said, all of the actors did a wonderful job. I mean, this is obviously one of those movies that's very, very different. So the fact that they could all come together and the acting itself was great on everyone's part, but just also that extra element of this is so weird and we have to sell that this should be a legit thing. They did a pretty good job on that, I think. Now, this is one of those movies that the technical aspects are just so well done as well, especially the production design. I mean, there's so many locations, really, really cool houses. There's this boat. There's a theater play sort of thing going on. I'm not going to get into what all of it means. They just did a really great job with the production design, the music, the camera work, obviously. You know, Ari Aster has a very good hold on how to craft a movie technically. So obviously all of that was great. But what I want to focus on more is the story and the tone. So firstly, on the tone, this is obviously a very dark black comedy. There are so many moments where you're like, this shouldn't be funny, and yet for some reason it is. And not even in a Tarantino way where it's like, oh, I shouldn't be laughing at this, but I am. But it's like, was the point even to laugh at this? And in any other movie, this same scene being done the exact same way wouldn't cause me to laugh, because of the context around it. But because of the absurd context around all of this, it's like, that was so funny. And it shouldn't be. Now, the big thing, though, the story and the themes. Obviously, this is a movie where you're like, is there a plot? Yes, actually. There is. More of a plot than I would have imagined there was going to be. And honestly, in its own way, somehow, it has clear themes, and it does actually bookend. You guys know me, and you know that normally I am not a lover of these kinds of movies, but I don't know if it's just me having a better mindset about them now, being more open about it, just accepting that these movies exist, or what. But part of it that I think I didn't hate this movie, I think part of the reason is that it does, in its own way, wrap up. It doesn't just end without reason or just like, all right, well, that was it. What was the point? Not to say it doesn't just end. Like, it does just end, and you're like, oh, okay, that was it. But there's a point. It wraps up thematically, at least. I mean, this whole movie is about metaphor and theme and getting these certain ideas across. And it does that. Now, that being said, and this is where I'm going to hop into the middle section, it is a movie that half of me wants to say I can critique, the other half of me wants to say I can't. Because let's be honest, a lot of this movie is not meant to be totally understood. So, does it get a pass in that sense? Because it's one of those movies, you're dealing with a film that involves mental health, mental illness, skewed perspectives in a way that we would never understand without seeing this movie, and medication. It's gonna be weird. It's gotta be experimental. I mean, how else are you gonna be able to portray certain things without it being abstract and weird and seeing it from this person's perspective? Because people with deep mental issues and trauma, they see things, maybe not exactly in this way, it could be, but they see things in a way where, like, portraying it this way in this movie makes you get a glimpse of, okay, that's sort of what they're dealing with here, even if it doesn't quite make sense to me. Take The Father, for example. When I did the review for that movie, I said in my review, this is the closest I'll ever come to understanding what dementia and Alzheimer's is like without actually having it myself because of how they edited it and everything. And yes, that was way less abstract than this movie, but it's the same principle of you have to do some different things in order to get across a feeling or a point or imagining of what something is like without you actually having to go through it. So yeah, there are tons of parts in this movie where I can't necessarily pinpoint this is what this was contributing to the metaphor, or this is how this adds to the theme, or connects with everything. There are hundreds of moments in this movie that I have no idea what it actually really was trying to do specifically, but generally, I can see the whole arc of what he was trying to get across with about 2 or 3 specific themes of the movie. So in that way, is it a failure or is it a success? That I don't completely understand it, but kind of do. Because it also gives me a reason to want to go back. It's like all the, Jordan Peele movies and other Ari Aster movies where you go back and you're like, that's this little detail I missed. In this one, there's obviously like a myriad of those little ones, and you're probably still not going to understand it once you see it. But there's all these things that I want to try to figure out, not necessarily like what are they in the movie, but why are they there? And if all else fails, I'll just call upon the idiot clause, which, you guys know the idiot clause. So, with all of that being said, do I actually have any lows? I think the only one I can consider a solid low is that for some of it, I was a little bit bored, I'm not gonna lie, which is not the low that I have expected to be saying about this movie. But it does drag on. It is 3 hours, but it's not really that, because that involves, it's like a whole lot of different chunks of arcs going on. It's more so that certain scenes, just, if you're not really into it, they're going to be there for a bit, and it just kind of drags on a little bit here and there. And Ari Aster does do that. He is a slow burn director, and probably, actually, this is probably the quickest movie that he has, because Hereditary and Midsommar, they do hold on things a long time, and they are very slow burn and then build to something insane. And this movie's kind of, I guess, the opposite of that. It's a lot of insane, and it builds to like slow moments that I was, a little bored by. But it's funny because for as much as I praise Hereditary and then as much as I like Midsommar, I was surprised that I didn't come out of this movie as affected, or disturbed as I was with the others. And obviously the intent of this movie is not to disturb necessarily as much as the other two, or as directly as the other two. Its purpose was not to necessarily scare you or give you a solid, this is a great movie with some metaphor in it, with some visual storytelling that's really abstract. The whole thing is way different than that. It's an experimental movie. So Beau is Afraid overall. I gotta go back and watch it again at some point. It's not necessarily one that I want to continue going back and watching. It's by far, it's not my favorite movie by far or anything, but I was just surprised at how much I didn't hate it. And again, I think it's because solely because it does end where I'm like, okay, I got what you were going for here. Not all the way throughout, but in this point, and on the end, I get it. I know what you were trying to do. And again, it's just that open mindset of like, maybe we just need experimental movies sometimes, and they're not always going to work. But, you know, you tried something new, and you got something out of it. And maybe it wasn't like directly a hit or whatever, but it did something new and gave you some sort of perspective into something you didn't know before. And, you know, just for the general audience who isn't really into that, it does have a lot of really funny, unintentionally funny moments. It is hilarious. It's odd. It's got a lot of intriguing imagery for sure. It doesn't necessarily feel like an Ari Aster movie, but that's okay. It does in spots and it doesn't in spots. But overall, I'll just say I didn't hate it as much as some people. I'm going to give Beau is Afraid a 3 out of 4. I will say it's probably better that they went with Beau is Afraid rather than their original title, Disappointment Boulevard, which, man, just imagine every journalist, movie reviewer, Disappointment Boulevard, a disappointment that suits the name. I would have done that. Well, guys, let me know what you think of Beau is Afraid. I really want to know because there's been a lot of discourse over it. And let me know what you think of Charlie Kaufman movies in general, because again, it's not exactly the same, but a lot of people are comparing it because they have a lot of these same kind of qualities. And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, the movie's right in the middle. And that's it. I'll see you guys later.